If a line manager doesn't know how to delegate tasks, they can be stressed and then end up stressing their staff.
Each organization is different. So certain things that might cause stress in an organization might be different from what would cause stress in another organization.
A lot of times when you have line managers who are really insecure and jealous and all these negative behaviors that we see, it's all stemmed from trauma. In fact, my mom says that everyone is traumatized. So, and it's true, we've all experienced some sort of trauma.
There are quite a lot of line managers who are the stressors to their staff.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Inclusive Workplaces with Amara. I'm Dr. Amara, and on this podcast, we share strategies and best practices and even stories on how to build and lead inclusive workplaces. And today, I have an incredible topic, a topic I think every line manager, every organization, and every team member should know about, and that is about stress. On today's episode, we're going to be looking at stress and stress management and why understanding how to manage stress and well-being in the workplace is absolutely important, because we know stress is the silent killer in the workplace. And joining me today to explore this wonderful topic, so timely, is none other than a very good friend of mine, Mr. ThankGod Ocheho. Welcome to the show, thank God. Welcome to Inclusive Workplaces.
Thank you, Amara. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Thank God, a lot of people may not know you. Would you like to just introduce yourself for our audience, please?
My name is ThankGod Ocheho. I work with NIM Foundation. NIM Foundation is a non-governmental organization based in Nigeria, but we've done a lot of work but beyond Nigeria. And I head the psychology department of the organization. So we design programs around mental health and psychosocial support. So we've done a lot of programming, implemented programs in conflict zones, such as the Northeast, Northwest, North Central of Nigeria, as well as the Lake Chad Basin, Cameroon, Niger, Chad. We've implemented different initiatives that have helped survivors of conflict to be able to recover from their traumatic experience. So it's my pleasure to come and share certain things that we've done, especially in the work that we do in outreach environments. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank God for sharing. And I just want to, again, commend you for the work that you do, because it's so important that we have these services, especially for those who've gone through very traumatic experiences. And it'll be very interesting to see how we can tie in some of the expertise in the workplace in terms of looking at some similarities when it comes to stress and trauma, and how that might also impede work in the workplace. Why don't we start with stress? You work in this space. What would you define it? Like, what is stress? I think we all know, but it'd be nice to hear your perspective around stress. What is this stress that we keep talking about?
Okay, I think in simple terms, stress basically is just the body's natural response to demand or threat, whether the threat or demand is real or perceived. So it's just the way we respond to demand or threat. And it's also basically just the passive demand that overwhelm our capacity, our internal resources to be able to manage or handle those demands. So when there is a demand from the external environment and your internal resources is not able or are not able to match the demand, then you begin to experience stress.
So it can be perceived or it can also be real. Yeah. So in other words, it's like there's like a dysregulation happening in the body that's causing that outward expression of unease, in a sense, because your body's unable to manage the impulses. Okay. The thing is, we can't really run away from stress. Stress is a part of life. We can't run away from it. But I think what really helps is knowing how to, first of all, identify when you're stressed. In your experience, do you think people know or are able to identify when they're going through stress? Because, I mean, stress accumulates over time, right? And then it begins to manifest in different ways. And some people may not even know, like, that they're actually under tremendous stress because they have a higher capacity to absorb. In your line of work, do you know if people are very aware of what indicators show that they're stressed?
Yeah, so I think first, let me say that stress in itself is not bad, because we're going to face stress in this life. As long as you keep making progress, as long as you keep working, you're going to experience stress. And that is why we are talking about stress management, not avoiding stress, because it's
Mm.
difficult for you to avoid stress. Even not doing anything in itself can become stressful for you. You understand? So that's why it's difficult for us to say you want to avoid stress. Stress is part of life, and
Yeah.
stress in itself is not bad. That's why we talk about use stress. Use stress can motivate, but what is bad is what we call distress. So distress
Mm.
overwhelms. So there's the eustress and there's the distress.
Eustress? What do you mean by that?
Yeah. When we ask that stress is good or stress is bad, so the good side of stress is what
The good.
refers to our eustress, which can motivate you. For instance, you have an exam that you're preparing for, you understand, and you are reading. Yes, there are times you feel like sleeping, but you just have to motivate yourself because there's a goal that you want to achieve.
Mm.
That kind of stress in itself is not bad. But when stress now begins to affect your health, it begins to overwhelm you to the point where it begins to get you to start taking drugs, you start getting to the hospital, you start falling sick, then it can lead to distress. So that's the bad side of stress.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for
So
clarifying. Yeah. Go ahead.
So back to the question that you asked earlier on, talking about are people aware of stress, when they are going through stress. Yes,
Yeah.
some people can be aware of it and some definitely do not even know, because there are certain symptoms that people experience when they are going through stress or when they have experienced burnout. So there's this theory that talk about general adaptation syndrome developed by Anseli, which talked about three stages. That the first stage is the alarm stage, where you get the initial response, where that your body responds to a demand or a threat. You understand?
Mm.
And the next stage is the coping stage, where you are able to now either try to manage it or you want to resist it. You understand? But it gets to the point, if the stress persists, it leads to burnout, it leads to
Mm.
exhaustion. You understand? Which is where it affects a lot of people. You get, because they
Yeah.
keep pushing, they don't know when to take break or take a break. Sometimes your body give you that sign, and the truth is that there are individual differences. Your sign that you are stressed can be different from my own sign. So the first thing is
Mm-hmm.
for people to become self-aware. You understand,
Yeah.
to know what signs or indicators shows that they are stressed, so that they pay attention to it. For me as an individual, when I'm begin to have slight headache, it's a sign for me that I've already begin to experience some level of stress.
Mm.
So at that time, there's a need for you to take a break. For some people, it could be stomach ache, it could be the fact that they're unable to concentrate, it could be the fact that they just become unnecessarily aggressive. Everything just gets irritated. They just get
Mm.
irritated at everything. So people have different reactions, or different ways in which they shows the sign that they are
Mm.
experiencing stress. But there are people that are going through stress. They don't know. They might just tell me to something different entirely. You understand? And that's why you see they keep pushing. They've gone to hospital. The doctor have run different, tests, and they say there's nothing wrong with them. But you've seen cases where some people have gone through that experience, run different tests, and nothing wrong. They just told them to go and rest, and after taking a rest, they are back again to normal, and they keep functioning and continue their
Mm.
productive activity again. So it's important for people to understand that if you know your sign, it's important for you to pay attention to it. And if you don't know, it's also important for you to become self-aware, so that you can begin to pay attention to those signs.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Thank God. I think it's extremely important to be self-aware. When I get stressed out, or especially when I'm traveling and I'm, going through airports and having long flights, the next day I usually get like a migraine headache. So I try to really decompress. For me, having a migraine is one stress indicator. Another one is that sometimes I wake up abruptly. I don't know if it's ever happened to you while you're sleeping. You wake up and scream. So when I'm sleeping, if I'm under a lot of stress and there's so many things on my mind, and maybe I'm thinking about these things while I go to bed. While I'm sleeping, I literally scream. I wake up and I'm screaming, and I'm like, oh, what's one time I was visiting my mom and I was sleeping, and then I woke up and screamed, and she came over. She's like, oh, what's happening? Are you okay? She was like, and then she sat me down. And later in the day, she's like, Margie, are you okay? I mean, are you stressed? Tell me, are you stressed? Because you're screaming in your dream, and that means that you're really stressed out. And my mom is a psychologist, so yeah. I told her, no, I'm fine. But it is a stress indicator, actually, and I think it's important that people learn about that. So I guess in the workplace, because I'm very interested in inclusive workplaces and what we can do, especially for line managers or people who manage teams, to be aware of this and to bring this awareness to the workplace. And I'm just wondering, within your context, do you think that this is something that is actually talked about in the workplace? Do people talk about stress management? Do people talk about helping staff understand their stress indicators and what to do? Is this something that comes up at all?
Well, in my workplace, I think maybe because we understand it and we know the implication or consequences when people are really experiencing burnout or they are really exhausted as a result of the work. So we know the implications, so we pay attention to it. We have programs and systems that we have put in place in my workplace that help people to be able to manage stress. There are two activities or programs that we do in my organization. The first one, we call it the mental health check, where we are able to call in all our staff, both the staff in HQ and at the field level, where we call them in to just check on them and be sure they're doing well, just to ask basic questions if they are fine, if everything's okay, hope the workload is not too much, just to be sure that everyone is fine. And the second thing that we do every quarter, we do what we call wellness session for staff, where all the staff come together at a different location. They discuss certain issues around stress, mental health, self-care, wellness. They play games, do different activities. Sometimes they could do painting and so on and so forth. So that is done every quarter. So it's part of our system in my organization. We've been able to institute that. But I've realized, based on the work we've done with other organizations. So for instance, last year, we did a project where we did wellness session for 250 civil society organizations across Nigeria, where we realized that is a major gap. And the reason why people don't really pay attention to it is because quite a number of people do not or have not been able to see the connection between stress and mental health issues. So because of that disconnect, people just feel, just work, just get this job done. All I need is the outcome, is the result. You are paid to deliver, so you just have to deliver. So they are disconnecting that demands that comes from the job from mental health issues. So because people don't pay attention to that, so they don't really place value in putting a system that help people to manage their stress. So I think that there's need for more sensitization and awareness, especially when we live in an environment where people see mental health problem more as a religious crisis and not a public health crisis. So that in itself is a major issue, because people can come to the workplace and they're experiencing mental health problem, and people can begin to say and term, give them different name or label them or even stigmatize them. You understand? That's why I love the fact that you are talking about inclusive workplace. Such people needs to be placed in the workplace, and we need to talk about the connection between just what happened in the workplace, even the thing that happen in their own personal life, how it can impact the stress that they go through at home, in the environment, in the country as a whole, how it can impact even in the job that they do in the workplace. So I think those conversations are also important for us to have. Thank you.
You're absolutely right. I love what you said there about the connection between stress and also how people, present in the workplace, how the home life also, because a lot of people say, oh, leave your home life and your personal things at home. And when you come to the workplace, just focus on your job. But you're a human being, you're not a robot. You can't just switch off your emotions. I mean, if you're not showing it, like in your face, if it's not showing in your face, you're feeling it. It's also affecting how you think, how you engage with your team. So it's a good point to bring that awareness. And that's why I'm really passionate about how do we make the workplace a more inclusive space where people are supported. And I like that you also talked about mental health, because you're right, within the Nigerian context, mental health, although it's a rising understanding and awareness of it, it's still not mainstream. So there's a lot of stigma attached to that. And so for those people who experience some level of mental health disorder or just barely making it and having to show up to work because they have to make money, there might be a lot of stigmatization in the workplace. And there's a real need for line managers, especially at the company level, to include this into how they train their staff and to raise awareness within the management so that employees are better supported. And that's kind of why I really want us to have this conversation around what can be done. What do you suggest? For example, if there's a line manager right now watching this, or a CEO is watching this, a lot of times they don't see that connection, like you said, between stress and the work. So what can be done? What are the first steps to raising awareness and helping people understand the huge impact and the necessity of having stress management, the necessity of it being integrated in the systems of the workplace. Let's start with that.
So I think first it's important for line manager himself to understand what stress is about, because you cannot give what you don't have. So if they don't really see the importance of stress management, if they don't see the need for the employees to understand stress management, then it will be difficult for them to give such to the employees because they don't have it, not because they intentionally do not want to do that. Secondly, it will be difficult for them to create systems that will help employees to manage their stress. So I think the first thing is for them to even create the awareness first. Let them acquire the knowledge, get the information of what stress is about, importance of stress management, how stress management can enhance productivity in the workplace, and all those conversations. They need to have that understanding. So once they're able to have the understanding, they need to also, as line manager, begin to create the awareness in the workplace. They need to push for it. It's beyond talk. They need to also begin to put system in place. Like I just mentioned in my organization, the things that we do. Sometimes we've even integrated it as a policy. You understand? So people need to integrate it as a policy in the workplace. And for line manager, you need to also look at, have a question. It could be a survey you want to do. What are the things that stress you within the workplace? So you want to know, because sometimes it could even be the way you are micromanaging the staff that is putting a lot of stress on them. It could be the workload, because workload is heavy deadlines and all of those stuff can cause stress. So you want to have that understanding of the things that you do, because each organization is different. So certain things that might cause stress in an organization might be different from what cause stress in another organization. So you want to look at it so that you can customize your own stress management techniques. You understand? Yes, there are techniques in books and in other places that you can find, but it's important you first of all identify the problem in your own workplace that leads to stress. And once you be able to do that, it's also important you customize your own stress management techniques and see what works for your staff. And that can help to be able to, once you understand that, you can put that in form of system and structure as well as policy, so that it can help the organization to grow. And trust me, once you're able to do this, you will see that the productivity level of your staff will definitely increase in the workplace.
Wow, this is a great point. First of all, the leaders need to be aware, right? So we need leadership awareness around stress and stress management. And well-being, I think we should also talk about well-being. Like, how do we promote the well-being aspect in the workplace? I love what you do at your work. It's, you have this quarterly check-in and you have different things to distress and things to kind of also connect. I think what those activities do is that it creates an opportunity to bond and connect. And when human beings are connected, there's some kind of co-regulation that's happening somehow. People are able to, through the positive vibes, or what we call oxytocin, like when people start feeling that, there's a sense of calmness, a sense of good feelings that can really impact the mental status of a person, right? Positively. And that could definitely have a good impact on the workplace. I also want to talk about, you briefly mentioned micromanaging, who are micromanagers, and even how leaders lead could also add to stress and, of course, workload. And this leads me to think about leaders being not only self-aware, but also aware of their staff members. We can talk about what line managers can do to become more self-aware so that they're not stressing their team members. A lot of times I feel that line managers who are not very clear in terms of the job roles that they've given out or expectations of their staff, if they're not clear about that, that can lead to a lot of confusion and stress. If a line manager doesn't know how to delegate tasks, they can be stressed and then end up stressing their staff. And of course, line managers who are insecure can also pose severe consequences in the workplace. So yeah, I'm wondering, like, what are some very concrete steps that line managers can do to begin to create that inclusive experience? Do you offer courses like this in your organization?
Yeah, I think you've been able to some extent, answer the question that you just asked, and in the sense that there are quite a lot of line managers who are the stressors to their staff. Just the same way you have some staff who have become stressors to their line manager. So it's vice versa. And some of these line manager, the stressors are rooted from a place of, like you mentioned, insecurity, their leadership styles. All of these are impacting on the level of stress that the staff are experiencing. But in terms of they being self-aware, what are practical things they can do? I think one of the things that they can do is to first of all even know there's an issue with their style of leadership, you understand, or with the way they are handling or managing the staff. They need to come to that point where they are humble enough to tell themselves the truth, to examine themselves and say, yes, there's something wrong with the way I'm leading my team. You get, because the point in which you get to that self-realization that something is wrong, it really help you to begin to re-examine your style entirely. So it's for you to be able to humble yourself. Secondly, you need to now begin to list out certain things that you do in the organization that cause stress to your staff. And sometimes you might go to the extent of even asking your staff, let them be honest to you. You get, have open conversation. That's what we call like open day. You understand? Where you have that honest conversation with your staff. Don't come as a boss. Just come, put down the hierarchy and all of that. Just have honest conversation because you want to grow, you want to improve. So let them talk to you. I remember when I was lecturing, I was staying in the university, I had that conversation with my students. I told them that please, this time I'm not, standing before you as a lecturer. I just want to know the things that I need, areas I need to improve. What are the things that I'm doing that is even impacting on you? And the practical things they can do is to have that conversation. And please don't be defensive. Just be open-minded to accommodate their responses. So once you are able to get, because sometimes they understand your blind spot or they know your blind spot more than even you do. That's why it's called blind spot. So you might not really know it. So they can see it. You understand? Before they begin to magnify it, it's important for you to sit down, ask yourself that question. So once you get those feedback, don't just get the feedback and throw them somewhere else. Sit down, begin to list out the strengths, the weaknesses, the areas that the things you are doing that is impacting on them negatively, and begin to ask yourself, what do I need to do to improve on this? And as you begin to do that, it helps you because life is progressive. Nobody is perfect. You understand? So you keep growing, we keep learning, and we keep making mistakes. But the more we make mistakes, the more we learn from it, and we get the feedback, we improve, and we become better leaders or better line managers. So it's important for us to understand that part of self-awareness is taking all those practical steps. You realize that sometimes they might not even see it because what they are seeing is the behavior, but there are other things that are rooted from the place of trauma. It might be the way you were brought up, the childhood experience you've gone through, the things that have affected you, that have shaped your personality, that you are bringing to the workplace. Most times it's difficult for those things to be disconnected. Who you are cannot be disconnected from what you do in the workplace. Most time it flows. So you need to do some checking, if you need to see a professional, to get you through that process, because sometimes what you've gone through have made you become insecure, have made you develop low self-esteem, have made you become aggressive. All of this behavior you are bringing to the workplace is putting so much stress on your employees, your staff. Is affecting you, but you've not been here for the trauma, because sometimes your employee can be a trigger, and once they trigger you, you get stressed, you get aggressive, you get angry. Everybody becomes stressed in the process, and the cycle continues because you've not been able to pay attention to be self-aware of those things that you've experienced in the past. So it's important, for beyond you getting feedback from your employees, it's also important that there are deep-seated pain, deep-seated trauma that you've not healed from, that you need to get a professional to help you to get through that process. Yes, we do program courses, we do a lot of training sessions on awareness, self-care, we teach them stress management. But even before we talk about stress management, we talk about mental health issues, because we know that there's a connection. So we help people to come to that point of self-realization where they are self-aware, where they understand the mental health problem they are going through. And sometimes we do mental health tests just for us to be able to tell, because most people go to hospital to do normal checkup, but you never seen anybody tell you that I went to do mental health check and test. So it's important people do all of these things and help them to become better line managers.
Wow, thank you so much for the very detailed explanation on what to do. I really like that you talked about having assessments and also the idea of introspection, understanding where your trauma lies and how that's also impacting leadership style and how one engages in teams. You also mentioned having an open day and having staff share. And I think that comes with a lot of psychological safety, right? The ability to speak up without this fear of any kind of consequence. And I don't know if you're in a team that is super stressful and maybe you have a line manager that's vicious and not the nicest. I just wonder how safe people will feel like speaking up and being very open. So I guess more work would need to be done to create the kind of trust and safety that allows people to speak up. That's one. And I definitely think when it comes to this ability to do the self-assessment, I wonder if Nigerian companies are really at that place or are aware enough of the importance to engage in that kind of process. Because I may be wrong, but I think that when we talk about health and mental well-being, it's not exactly, front and center. It's not top of mind. So I'm just thinking about how do we break that mold? Maybe there needs to be a campaign just to understand and to help leaders tap into that, because you're absolutely right. A lot of times when you have line managers who are really insecure and jealous and all these negative behaviors that we see, it's all stemmed from trauma. In fact, my mom says that everyone is traumatized. So, and it's true, we've all experienced some sort of trauma. So it makes sense to be maybe trauma informed and to create a workplace where these issues are not taboo or stigmatized, but rather embraced, because it can only add to creating an environment where staff members thrive. I definitely appreciate the expertise that you bring into this conversation and ways in which line managers can tap into it. Yeah.
Thank you.
I guess moving forward, what we need to do is to tie in the benefits. Perhaps if line managers and companies understood or understand the benefits of having thriving employees, perhaps that could be one way. What do you think? What if there's a way to show companies that, hey, look, if you have team members who are engaged, who are happy, you're going to have a better output and more productivity, and people will not quit or fall sick. So maybe that's some way to start the conversation. How would you go about it? How do we start the campaign to get line managers talking about mental health and talking about an inclusive workplace? What do you think about that?
I think it's very, very important. And I wish I have the superpower to bring all line managers over the world together and have this conversation. The reason why I say it's important is the fact that it's like a farmer. The most powerful thing for the farmer is not just about the seed. Yes, the seed is important. You understand? But the soil, the environment in which the seed is growing is much more and very important. The reason is because no matter how powerful the seed is, if the soil is not fertile, if the environment is not good, the capacity, the potential of the seed will not come out. And that's how it works. The environment that the line manager creates within the workspace is very important. Your staff will either thrive or be demotivated based on the kind of environment that you create for them. So even if they are intelligent, even if they are smart, if the right environment is not created, if the environment is toxic, it can impact on their productivity. So that is why it's important. Even Forbes have shown before, I think there's a research that was documented that talked about amount of dollars that have been lost as a result of people not emotionally stable, people going through stress, even in the workplace, because it impacts negatively on their level of productivity. So that environment is very important. That's why I talk about workplace culture. What kind of culture has been created? You understand? Does it allow people to express themselves? Does it allow people to be able to work effectively? There's this theory of motivation that Einstein and Ryan created. They talk about the self-determination theory, which focus on three major concepts, which has to do with autonomy, competence, and relatedness. It means that autonomy says that once you create an environment where people become autonomous, the freedom to choose, when they see that there's a level of freedom to express their initiative and creativity, you say it enhances productivity. So if you create that kind of environment, it boosts the productivity level of your staff within the workplace. They also talk about competence, the environment that you create for people to feel that they're in charge. You understand? That they're in charge of whatever tasks that they are doing, that they feel that competence within the workplace. So also enhance productivity. And the last one, which is very important, which talk about relatedness, that the environment you create that make people feel valued, the sense of belonging, they feel appreciated. He said it will help to enhance productivity in the workplace. People will be motivated to do the job. So put these three together, create this kind of environment. You will see how productive your staff will become. You see how how energetic and motivated they will be. But if it is the other way around, then it also begins to impact negatively on their level of productivity. So it's important for us to see how creating the workplace environment culture that allow for autonomy, competence, relatedness, people express expressing themselves, to be able to show some level of freedom in their work, bringing their creativity, and taking charge of their tasks. Trust me, sky will just be the beginning. You will create an environment where people every day they are motivated to come to work, they are doing their job even without you telling them to do it. But once they create a different environment from that, what begins to happen is the fact that your staff become demotivated. The environment, the energy is low. Everything, within the workplace, it begins to impact on the level of productivity. So it's important for you, for every line manager to pay attention to this and grow within the workspace.
Yeah, I love that. You said autonomy, competence, and relatedness, right? Those are the three main axes. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I also think that one way, and I have my own theory, one way to bring this together, because we're talking about work culture. Actually, when we talk about well-being and stress management, it's part of work culture. That is the culture that guides the way people work together, right, in the workplace. And I believe that, I think one effective tool that is so easy and so accessible to everybody is to have a team agreement. A team agreement is a form of it's a team norm where all team members co-create this team norms, these rules that guide the expectations and the behaviors of team members in a particular team. And so when a line manager, for example, takes the courage and the initiative to put together and co-create a team agreement, underlining all these different things we've talked about, whether it's communication, well-being and stress, collaboration, decision-making, the values and the culture of the team, as well as conflict management. When we kind of put this on the table and co-create how we want to show up, how we want to engage based on all the different categories I've just mentioned, we already have a fantastic foundation that can build and help us create an inclusive workspace that also caters to people who may be needing additional support. So that understanding is there. This is co-created, means that all team members share how they want to be treated, and the line manager can then share her or his vision around what competency looks like, what the expectation is in terms of their strategic ambitions, what kind of relatedness or related ways he wants people to engage in, to share his perspective around autonomy, what that might look like, and then also hear from this team or her team how that also looks like, how they feel, how they might respond to these prompts. And I think when we do this, we're already creating a fantastic foundation for understanding. We're creating a fantastic foundation for collaboration, and also ensuring that we do find ways to mitigate conflict, because that's another source of stress in the workplace. When we put this on the table, no assumptions, we're very explicit in terms of how we want to work together as a team. When we use the team agreement in that sense, we are also doing something that could really benefit the team culture and overall the organizational or the company culture. Yeah. Have you used this before, the team agreement style or methodology?
No. I'm not.
So that's something that I definitely feel that companies can tap into. And that's something I do. Actually, I run a lot of workshops around.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. So I run a lot of workshops around that to kind of help teams and organizations bring more clarity, because we know that a major source of anxiety and stress, I would say the major culprits are the lack of communication, poor feedback culture, conflict management. I don't know, what would you be your top three culprits of a dysregulated team or a team that is non-functional due to stress?
For me, at the top of my mind, I think I agree with one that you said, which is like clear communication. I will include, maybe I'm just being biased, but I think childhood trauma is a fundamental aspect. And the last one also, leadership.
Of course, leadership. It all comes back to leadership, how you lead. Yeah, fantastic. Wow. Thank God. I'm so grateful for this time. We're going to wrap up right now. And I want to thank you so much for your time. And perhaps before we leave, I always like to share, like, what is one takeaway you want line managers and CEOs and team members to take away from this episode? If there's one thing you want them to really remember, what would that be?
For me, wellness is not a luxury. It is a productivity strategy.
I love that. Wellness is not a luxury, it's a productivity strategy. I think that should be like on the billboard somewhere. That's amazing. I'm going to write that down rather. Yes, that's fantastic. For me, I would say make the time to co-create your team agreement. Make the time to put down how you want the team culture to look like. Don't make assumptions. Don't just think everybody understands or knows how each other wants to be treated. Be very explicit. Co-create that together. And you'll be surprised how you'll become even more productive and more connected. Because when you align as a team, you thrive. And we want staff to work in thriving environments, just like you mentioned with the soil. The environment has to be enabling in order for them to really do good work. So with that, I want to say thank you. Thank God.
Thank you very much.
Is there anything you're currently working on that you would like other people to know? And if someone wanted to reach out to you, how might they do that?
I have my email address. They can reach me to all my social media handle or
What is the handle?
So my social for LinkedIn is just ThankGod Ocheho on LinkedIn. On Instagram is the child psychologist. You can reach me through that platform.
The child psychologist. Okay, fantastic. All right. Thank you so much again for joining us today. It was really fun. I really enjoyed having this conversation and I learned so much.
I learned also from the conversation with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank God. And I'm sure our listeners also got to enjoy as well as learn many ways in which they can have a more inclusive workplace. It can be more stress ready so that they can support their teams better. And we definitely look forward to having more conversations on this topic because it's so wide and we've only just touched the tip of the iceberg. So thank you so much. Thank you for your support for all the listeners out there. Until next time, be well. Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.